Ever wondered which cartoons scared adults more than kids? The 1970s weren't just bell-bottoms and disco. This decade unleashed animated nightmares so wild that governments locked them in vaults. One Japanese film had to smuggle its negatives across borders. Another caused theater walkouts across 3 continents. Which banned masterpiece would you risk jail time to watch? Number 10. Tarzun, Shame of the Jungle, 1975. Tarzun wasn't just controversial, it was animation's most infamous midnight screening obsession. This French-Belgian parody turned the jungle hero tale into a fever dream that had censors foaming at the mouth. Director Picha claimed it was sophisticated satire of colonialism, but audiences just saw a wild ride through taboo territory. The film follows Tarzun battling against the villainous Queen Bazanga and her army of bizarre creatures. The animation style? Deliberately crude with character designs that would make Freud need therapy. But here's where things get truly wild. The English dub featured Saturday Night Live stars John Belushi and Bill Murray recording their lines while completely intoxicated. The resulting chaos created a weird energy that cemented the film's underground status. American distributors slashed nearly 20 minutes of the most provocative material, but it still earned an X rating. Several states banned it entirely. The National Organization for Women picketed screenings in New York. The New York Times called it animation at its most aggressively juvenile. Against all odds, it developed a rabid following on college campuses. It grossed almost $2 million despite playing on fewer than 50 screens nationwide. The film's reputation as forbidden fruit made it irresistible to counterculture viewers seeking boundary-pushing animation. Today, film historians cite Tarzun as the missing link between Ralph Bakshi's adult animation and the later wave of provocative European cartoons. Its bold defiance of censorship opened doors for animated films that refused to play by the rules. Number 9. Metamorphoses, 1978. Metamorphoses was marketed as educational mythology but delivered something closer to an animated nightmare. Director Takashi Masunaga adapted Ovid's classic tales into a series of disturbing transformations that had American educators demanding the film be pulled from school libraries nationwide. Unlike traditional animation, Metamorphoses used a shockingly realistic art style for its Greek myths and didn't shy away from their disturbing elements. The story of Apollo and Daphne shows her literally transforming into a tree while fleeing unwanted advances. Actaeon's transformation into a stag and subsequent mauling by his own dogs was shown in graphic detail that left test audiences speechless. Japan's Toei Animation produced it as their first serious adult animation export to America, but the reception was disastrous. The MPAA gave it a PG rating despite content that would earn an R today. Schools that purchased it based on its educational marketing were horrified. Tennessee banned it from public schools entirely. Library associations removed it from circulation. Despite the controversy, animation historians consider it groundbreaking. The Metamorphosis sequences influenced films from The Thing to An American Werewolf in London. Director Guillermo del Toro called it animation that understood body horror before live action did. The film disappeared from distribution for decades before resurfacing on specialty streaming services. Modern viewers are stunned by its technical achievements and still disturbed by its unflinching approach to mythology's darker elements. What was meant as education became one of animation's most notorious cult classics. Number 8. Fantastic Planet, 1973. Fantastic Planet doesn't look controversial at first glance. Its paper-cutout animation style seems almost primitive. But this French-Czech science fiction allegory delivered such a blistering critique of Soviet occupation that it was banned throughout the Eastern Bloc and nearly destroyed before completion. Set on a distant planet where giant blue aliens keep humans as pets, the film was an obvious metaphor for Soviet domination of Czechoslovakia. Director René Laloux had to smuggle film reels to France when Soviet tanks literally rolled into Prague during production in 1968. The completed film was immediately banned in Soviet-controlled territories. The imagery gets intense. Humans are casually crushed, experimented on, and treated like vermin. One scene showing human children used as living toys by alien children was cut from most international versions. The hallucinogenic visuals and jazz fusion soundtrack by Alain Goraguer created a viewing experience that felt like a profound acid trip. American distributors had no idea how to market it. Roger Corman's New World Pictures eventually picked it up for midnight screenings, where it became a counterculture hit. Despite censorship, it won the Special Jury Prize at Cannes. Steven Spielberg called it animation that makes you question what it means to be human. Today, it's considered one of the most important animated films ever made, influencing everything from Adult Swim to Guillermo del Toro. The film that nearly didn't survive became animation's most potent political statement, proof that paper cutouts could deliver more impact than Hollywood spectacles. Number 7. Allegro Nonropo, 1976. Allegro Nonropo wasn't just banned for controversy, it was almost erased by corporate lawyers. Director Bruno Bozzetto created this Italian answer to Disney's Fantasia that twisted classical music into surreal, often disturbing animated segments that left audiences both laughing and deeply uncomfortable. While Fantasia gave you dancing hippos, Allegro gave you evolutionary satire set to Ravel's Bolero, where a Coca-Cola bottle becomes the catalyst for a planet's doomed civilization. Disney's lawyers immediately tried shutting it down. Screenings were halted across Europe. The film's segment featuring Sibelius's Valse Triste, showing an elderly cat wandering through the ruins of a demolished home, left test audiences in tears. Another segment featured a snake-like creature pursuing a woman in an Eden-like garden. Distributors panicked. The Vatican condemned it. Italy's film board demanded cuts that Bozzetto refused. Despite the legal battles, Allegro developed a massive underground following. Midnight screenings in college towns became events. Film professors smuggled copies into universities. Even some Disney animators secretly praised it. "Animation should disturb," Bozzetto said in a rare interview. "If it only comforts, it's just a teddy bear." The film eventually got a limited American release, but with heavy cuts. It wasn't until 2018 that a fully restored version finally appeared. Today, it's celebrated as one of animation's boldest experiments. Half parody, half revolutionary art that proved animation could be satirical, melancholy, and provocative all at once. Number 6. Dirty Duck, 1974. Dirty Duck might be the most outrageous animated film ever made by a major studio. This New World Pictures release combined underground comics aesthetics with jazz fusion music for 70 minutes of content so extreme that the MPAA created the X rating partly in response to it. The plot barely matters. A repressed office worker meets a foul-mouthed duck who drags him through a series of increasingly bizarre adventures. Director Charles Swenson began the film with producer Roger Corman, who withdrew after seeing early footage. "Too extreme even for me," Corman reportedly said. "That's saying something." Most theaters refused to show it. Those that did often cut it off mid-screening when managers realized what was playing. Chicago and Boston banned it outright. The few critics who reviewed it were stunned. Variety called it animation that makes Ralph Bakshi look like Walt Disney. Despite the controversy, it developed a following in midnight screenings. Musician Frank Zappa was such a fan, he hired Swenson to create animation for his concert films. The film even won an award at a small animation festival in France, where the jury called it deliberately and proudly offensive art. For decades, it was nearly impossible to find. No VHS release, no DVD, nothing but blurry bootlegs. Only in recent years has it been rediscovered by animation historians who recognize its pioneering, if chaotic, approach to adult animation. As animator Ralph Bakshi later noted, "Dirty Duck was so wild it made my films look tame, which is saying something." Number 5. Shinbone Alley, 1971. Shinbone Alley sounds innocent enough, a musical about a cockroach who's in love with a cat. But this film adaptation of the Broadway show featuring the voices of Carol Channing and Eddie Bracken caused such a stir that many theaters refused to book it, despite its star power. Based on the Archie and Mehitabel stories by Don Marquis, the film follows Archie, a poet reincarnated as a cockroach, who falls hopelessly in love with Mehitabel, an alley cat with questionable morals. The animation style was intentionally gritty, featuring dark alleyways and seedy urban environments that were a far cry from Disney's sanitized worlds. What really shocked viewers was the film's unflinching look at Mehitabel's lifestyle. She's portrayed as promiscuous, irresponsible, and constantly abandoning her kittens. Theatrical censors in conservative states like Utah and Oklahoma refused certification. Parent groups called for boycotts, claiming the film normalized dysfunctional family structures. Critics were divided. Some praised its artistic daring, others condemned its bleak worldview. The Washington Post called it a cartoon for adults that makes you question why cartoons should be for children at all. The film struggled at the box office, earning only $1.2 million against a budget of $1.5 million. After its theatrical failure, the film vanished from circulation until the late 1990s. Animation historians now consider it a lost classic, a brave attempt to bring literary sophistication to animation decades before studios would try again. Its dark urban aesthetic and existential themes influenced later animators from Ralph Bakshi to Bill Plympton. Number 4. Belelladana of Sadness, 1973. Belelladana of Sadness might be the most visually stunning film that almost disappeared forever. This Japanese psychedelic nightmare blends watercolor art with medieval European witch trials, creating something so controversial it bankrupted its studio and vanished for decades. The story follows Jean, a peasant bride who loses everything and makes a deal with the devil. Director Eiichi Yamamoto used barely animated watercolor tableaux that pulse and transform like fever dreams. The violence and imagery was so extreme for 1973 that Japanese censors demanded massive cuts. The studio refused. The film flopped catastrophically in Japan, forcing animation studio Mushi Production into bankruptcy. International distributors wouldn't touch it. For almost 40 years, Belelladana existed only in fragmented bootlegs and film festival legends. Critics who did see it were stunned. Japan's leading film magazine called it animation that denies being animation. In 2016, a restored version finally emerged. Modern critics declared it a masterpiece, a powerful statement disguised as exploitation. Director Gaspar Noé cited it as a major influence on his controversial film Climax. What makes Belelladana truly remarkable is its fusion of European art movements with Japanese animation techniques. The film draws from Art Nouveau, Gustav Klimt, and medieval woodcuts while maintaining a distinctly Japanese sensibility. The result is unlike anything else in animation history, a hypnotic, disturbing journey that makes viewers uncomfortable, not just with its content, but with its revolutionary visual approach. Number 3. Wizards, 1977. Wizards is the film 20th Century Fox immediately tried to bury. Ralph Bakshi's post-apocalyptic fantasy about technology versus magic seemed like it might be family-friendly until executives actually watched it. Fairies getting shot by machine guns, Nazi propaganda footage incorporated into animation, a villain named Avatar 2,000 years before James Cameron. Fox initially gave Bakshi $1 million thinking they were getting a Lord of the Rings-style fantasy. Instead, he delivered a dark allegory about fascism, where a wizard literally uses Hitler's propaganda techniques to build an army. The studio panicked, demanded cuts, then barely promoted it when Bakshi refused. Most controversial was Bakshi's rotoscoping technique, tracing live-action footage over animation, particularly his use of actual Nazi propaganda films. Critics called it disturbingly realistic violence in a cartoon wrapper. Parents' groups across America demanded theaters cancel showings. Many did. Despite minimal marketing, the film developed a cult following so strong that theaters in college towns played it for years. It made $9 million on its tiny budget. Mark Hamill, fresh off Star Wars, declared it one of his favorite voice acting roles ever. George Lucas supposedly watched it 3 times before making Star Wars. Bakshi never compromised. "Animation isn't just for kids," he said. "That's like saying books should only be Dr. Seuss." Today, Wizard stands as a landmark of countercultural animation, proving that cartoons could tackle the darkest chapters of human history without flinching. Number 2. Coonskin, 1975. Coonskin is the film that almost ended Ralph Bakshi's career. This explosive satire of racism in America was so misunderstood that theaters were picketed, prints were destroyed, and Bakshi himself received death threats. Yet today, critics consider it one of the most important animated films about race ever made. The film follows Brother Rabbit, Brother Bear, and Preacher Fox, reimagined versions of the Uncle Remus characters as they battle corrupt cops, the mafia, and racist power structures in Harlem. Bakshi's uncompromising vision combined live action with animation, creating a raw, unflinching look at urban America that mainstream cinema avoided. What made Coonskin truly explosive was its deliberate use of stereotypes to attack racism itself. The Congress of Racial Equality misunderstood Bakshi's intentions and picketed the film's premiere at the Museum of Modern Art. Paramount Pictures panicked and dropped the film. Most theaters refused to show it. Critics who actually saw the film had a different take. Richard Pryor called it a masterpiece. The Village Voice praised it as a brutal, beautiful film about the impossible demands of identity. Despite the controversy, it developed a passionate following in limited release. For decades, Coonskin was almost impossible to find, existing in chopped-up TV versions or poor-quality bootlegs. In 2015, a restored version finally allowed new audiences to appreciate what Roger Ebert called animation willing to risk everything to tell the truth. Bakshi's fearless examination of America's racial wounds wasn't just ahead of its time, it remains more relevant and challenging than most films made today. Number 1. Fritz the Cat, 1972. Fritz the Cat isn't just the first X-rated cartoon, it's the film that burned animation's innocence to the ground. Director Ralph Bakshi dragged viewers through a New York underworld of vice, violence, and counterculture chaos that made censors lose their minds. Based on R. Crumb's underground comics, Fritz follows a college-age feline through riots, wild parties, and confrontations with pig cops, literally pigs as police. Crumb hated the adaptation so much he killed the character in his next comic. The Motion Picture Association slapped it with an X rating, guaranteeing theaters would refuse to show it. Despite being banned in Finland, Italy, and parts of the UK, Fritz raked in $90 million worldwide on a tiny $850,000 budget. That's over 100 times its cost. Theaters that did show it packed houses with crowds who had never seen animation aimed squarely at adults. Critics were divided. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars, while others called it a mindless animated destruction derby. Bakshi himself never backed down. "I wasn't interested in just shocking people," he said years later. "I wanted to break animation out of the kiddie ghetto." The film's frank portrayal of 1960s counterculture, race relations, and urban decay did something unprecedented. It forced audiences to recognize that animation could tackle the most complex aspects of modern life. Every adult animated series today, from The Simpsons to BoJack Horseman, owes a debt to Fritz's boundary-breaking journey. Whether you think it's brilliant satire or just cheap provocation, Fritz the Cat kicked down doors that animation never fully closed again. The 1970s broke animation wide open, pushing boundaries that even today's adult cartoons rarely touch. These films weren't just controversial, they were revolutionary acts of artistic rebellion. Which of these banned animations shocked you most? Did they go too far, or is animation still too restricted by outdated ideas about what cartoons can be? Remember, the most dangerous art is the kind that makes us uncomfortable, and these animated rebels are still making waves decades later. Drop your thoughts in the comments.